Welcome to the Path Forward, and this is Cassandra Williamson coming to you from way up in a holler, one of many, in eastern Kentucky. Actually, in a little place called Hardy, which is near where I went to high school at Belfry High School, and where I was born in Williamson, West Virginia, about 5 miles away. You know, it's a beautiful little area around here, really is. I say this all the time. If you are into ATVs, UTVs, coming riding trails and stuff like that, this is the place to come. This used to be the mining country around here, and there's still some of that around, but it's not like it used to be. It used to be called the heart of the $1 billion coal field, but I think that may have moved to Montana or Wyoming. But regardless, so first thing, let me give you an update on today. Things that have been going on since I got about 5:30 this morning, and actually had to get ready to take my mom over to the doctor. She's doing all right, doing well, actually. Just say that she had a bladder scan. It was a pelvic bladder scan, diagnostic lab, Bifel Medical Center, and everything works fine. There are no abnormalities, as the doctor put it, and they're happy with that. So she's still in stage 4 kidney failure, though, but she's been under that for I don't know, 4 years now, and it's been pretty steady. The numbers for the filtration rate have been really steady over that period of time. So we're thinking that maybe it's just going to remain steady, but there's a possibility it will change, obviously. Everybody else is doing well up here, too. That's my report, my evening report for the family, my family that I'm here as a caregiver for. Very fortunate. So one of the things I've been thinking about lately, and you tell me what you think about this too, but one of the things I've been thinking about lately has to do with all of this siloed research. Now, this came to mind after I had a conversation yesterday on X with several people. Some were psychologists and people like that, but they wanted me to, let's see, how do you put this? Go with the American College of Pediatrics reports and a little video. And, really, I can't do that because their stated objective is not to recognize any LGBT people. That's been their stated goal since, when they were founded in 2002. You can try to deny that, but it's the American College of Pediatrics. That's been their whole goal, not the American Academy of Pediatrics, but the American College of Pediatrics, founded in 2002. Its whole purpose is to go after LGBT people, everything about them, deny them rights, deny them access to health care, deny them everything that they can possibly think of because it is a religious thing for them. And so when I was asked to read or listen to a YouTube story, I did. I listened to it from the CEO. She's a pretty intelligent young lady. But American College of Pediatrics is biased as far as can be. Now, here's the question. Here's the thing about that. Are the other organizations that are out here on my side of the table, let's say, are they also biased? Yeah. They can't help it, okay? Because here's what's happened over time. Each of these different organizations, each of these different groups of people have become siloed in their way of thinking. They do not entertain opposing views. They reject viewpoint diversity within, from people who disagree with them, to the point of not even wanting to be around them. You need to bring those voices in. That needs to be part of this dynamic so that you can have research and studies that helps minorities and other social issues that is based on a collaboration, and it may be a contested collaboration, but it's a method that does work. It's adversarial research techniques. The University of Pennsylvania has a program that deals specifically with adversarial research, and there are funding opportunities for those organizations that actually do seek out adversarial research. And that's the kind of thing that really is fascinating to me, because a lot of the people who are psychologists who I see over on X and places like that, they have a narrow perspective too. They're in their own echo chamber. They have gatekeepers who kind of keep them in line, and when an idea opposes theirs, well, it becomes pretty apparent. But this is what I want to do. I want to try to reach out to them and say, here's your opportunity. Let's get involved in some research where you're part of the team. You disagree with me completely, but I want you as part of the team. You lend your perspective and I'll lend my perspective, and then we can come up with something that can actually be agreed upon as sound results, whether or not the results are what you expected. That's what we need more of. You've got to have research that is actually inclusive of other views. Even if it's in the trans community or the LGBT community, we've got to stop this siloed research stuff. It's great. I mean, it's self-congratulatory, pat you on the back, that kind of thing. That's fine for that specific community, but it does nothing to persuade the broader audience to show that this was actually valid. And it doesn't matter how many numbers of people you have in the study, well, except that you need a statistical significance like above 1,098 or something or other to have a fairly robust level of significance in the research, and something that can be widely replicated, actually extrapolated out to a larger population. Anything less than that, well, you can't. But the whole key is everything that I have seen for the past 40 years in this research, in this field of study on minority and social issues, everything has been siloed. The people involved in it are all already in agreement in support of whatever cause it is they're working on. And we need to change that. That's why we are where we are today in terms of research, because people on the right, they have their own teams of research and they like that, and they don't listen to anybody over on the left. And the left has their own team of researchers and people who lean their way that they have on their teams, but yet the two can't come together because the divide is getting wider and wider. We need to bridge that divide. That divide needs to be closed, and the way to do it is to, from the very beginning of your study design, from the very beginning of that study, you need to have people who disagree with you on that team. Knowledgeable people with whom you would not ordinarily even associate with because they're not in your echo chamber, not in your silo. But we need that if you want to move forward and have something that is sustainable over a longer period of time and that can be accepted by a broader population of people on all sides. Because then they know that the team consisted of people who think like them and also think like this side. So we've got to do more of that. I'll give you a little story. In a town in the Midwest, I was asked to, well, actually, I've been pushing for a human relations commission. So we ended up getting the city to do a task force. The little city out in Missouri, and they had it on their books that they could create this thing since 1972 or something like that, if I remember correctly. This has been quite a few years ago. It's been about a decade ago, roughly. And so it was on the books. They had never seated that commission. Finally, we were able to convince the city council to create a task force and then put people on this task force to see if we could do a human relations commission in the city. Okay. And so then they said, they're looking at me and they tell me, look, you can find anybody in the town, anybody that you want, bring them on there, bring them to us, and we'll approve them for your board of advisors here for this task force. Well, so I started rattling off some names because I already had an idea who I wanted. Obviously, as a very out, open, and very vocal trans person, even though I hate using that word, I use it here because that's the community I was working with at the time and still am. It's that I had to show them that in this Midwestern town near Whiteman Air Force Base, as a matter of fact, where the 509th left with those B-2 bombers recently, right there, about 10 miles from there. Whiteman's at Knob Noster. Okay, just so you know, I've been there, been in the squadrons. Yeah, it's an interesting place. But I digress. Another story altogether. But this town of about 19,000 people, they authorized that task force and gave me the opportunity to select people to come in. Hi, Rita. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'll get back to the comments in a minute. I'll go down that road with you in just a second, Rita. But here's the thing, though. The people I wanted on the team obviously were people in the community who were like me, or at least supportive of people like me and other LGBT people in the community. But I did not want that commission, or did not want the task force to be overburdened with just people like me. Why? Because I wanted it to last. I wanted to create something that would carry on even in my absence, because it had been built on a foundation that involved everyone in the community. At least gave people an opportunity who were directly opposed to my existence. So I started giving some names. Then I said, okay, I want the imam from the local Islamic center. And they go, really? Then I said, I want the most fundamentalist Christian preacher that you can find, who is broadly against everything that has to do with us. I want that person on this team. And anyone else, I had a team of, I wanted to put together a board. I don't remember the number I had on it, 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 people on that board. There were 7, I think. Might have been 9. But anyway, so we filled the seats with people who were generally opposed to each other's existence and had them sit down and work on this thing. A year later, we stood up. Well, I had left after that. I had to go down to Alabama, I think it was. But anyway, so when I left, the city authorized the creation of the Human Relations Commission that had been established in 1972, but never seated. It was seated, I think, in 2017 or 2018, somewhere around there. And so they wanted to know, why would you want people on? I said, because if you want something to last, if you want something to be broadly accepted across the community, you need to have the community represented, not just the LGBTQ plus community, but also the religious and faith communities, others. Also, law enforcement communities, everybody out there needed to be involved in this thing, because I wanted it to last. That means that the team that was built had to figure out a way to collaborate with each other and come up with something that they all could accept for a Human Relations Commission. That's the kind of thing and methodology that we need to use if we want to have research that can be at least more broadly accepted across America, regardless of your political persuasion, regardless of whether or not you hate this group or you're biased toward that one or against that one. The way forward involves bringing these sides together and having that kind of tough, difficult conversation to design the research so that all sides can appreciate it. That's a difficult thing. It requires a lot of human interaction. It requires a lot of emotional resilience and strength and intelligence. It requires a lot of those things. And you have to be able to listen when someone tells you, over here on the fundamentalist Christian side, we don't believe in your right to exist. You have to be able to sit down across from each other and have that conversation. You say something like, I'm here, so how do we move forward? What do we do? How do we create this commission or this research study so that it will succeed and last and be a service to this community and every person in it, regardless of whether they're Christian, Muslim, trans, gay, lesbian, bisexual, whatever. They needed to be heard. And when people have an opportunity to be heard, then things can change. Right now, what's happening in this country is that we are so tied up in our own little place, an own little thing, and gatekeeping it, that we're unable to even entertain the idea that their other views and perspectives are just as valid, at least as long as they're not violent about it. But they're just as valid. They have reasons for what they believe, and we should be working to hear them, and they should be working to hear us. But the whole key requires these opposing ideas and viewpoint diversity to be accepted as the norm on research boards, on commissions, on all of this stuff. Because when you have viewpoint diversity there, you have a greater opportunity for something to be created that will succeed and last. That's hard for a lot of people to understand, or at least grasp, or even to consider, really. And I get it. I understand that people like to feel good in the crowds that they're in. But that creates a nightmare whenever we're trying to bring the country together, because each group has established their own territory within their silos and echo chambers. They've created their own set of rules that each must follow. And they have people who actually control those things. So I got to know the imam of the local Islamic center, and we became friends. We met and talked on a number of different topics. I got to know the pastor of the local fundamentalist Christian church and the local Baptist church, all of whom are mostly opposed to our open existence. But over time, those relationships, the effort, the drive to do something to help the whole community created something that lasts and lasted and is still operational. So let me just say, it applies in our research, it applies in everything we do. If we can't hear the other side, or at least give them an opportunity to be heard, you're shooting yourself in the foot deliberately. And that's a hard thing for most of us to grasp, because we're so used to just being surrounded by people who think like, look like, believe like us. But growth doesn't come from that. Growth doesn't come from a nice, cozy, warm relationship with people who are all just alike. Our nation is not built that way. We've got people who disagree with everything you might say. Everything. But they want to be heard too. They're Americans. They need to be heard as well. And that's a difficult thing for lots of people to understand or get. So I challenge you. To talk to people, or at least don't just talk to them, but just listen and hear them out when somebody says that they don't like you, don't agree with you, don't think you are who you say you are, or anything like that. Listen to them and let them tell why. Ask them why. They'll tell you. They may use all kinds of words, like conversation I got into, I don't know, recently on X. Someone tried to equate being like me with autogynephilia, transvestitism, and all that kind of stuff. And I told them point blank, I said, no, I'm sorry, but that's not who I am. I'm Cassandra. I mean, whatever you want to, you can use words that you want to use and however you wish to describe them. But I want to know why you think that. So that's a challenge I have for everyone who might be listening to this. And I know we have a lot of drive-by listeners and watchers and stuff, and the numbers don't show up over there. Last night, they were actually officially, with the little eyeball thing up there in the corner, 40 people at one time on here. And I do this ranting and raving just about all the time. But I do want people, look, I'll just say this out loud. If you disagree with me, tell me. And then we'll have a conversation around that. I will not, though, allow people to try to gatekeep me into fitting into certain boxes with certain ideas on committees or research or anything like that, because I know that success comes from listening to those who disagree with you and listening respectfully, whether they treat you respectfully or not. That is a challenge. It requires a level of maturity that most of us just don't have. Or at least, I should say, we've never seen it in action. We don't have those examples in our lives. So that's what you need. That's what we have to have, folks. All right. Rita, I see you up there. You said, I will gladly discuss any subject with anyone who is not a bigot. Bigot has already closed their mind. And yes, I see that. And if they refuse to explain themselves to you, or at least let you hear why they say that, then there are times when you have to close them off. But the default setting is always to listen. I'll give you another story. I had a county judge executive in Alabama who wanted to argue with me over the cause of the Civil War. And this is a learned man, okay, the judge of the county, a little tiny county out in the western part of Alabama. And we were chatting a lot. And so I got to try to see that the Civil War was a little bit different creature, because one, his point of view was that it was just to preserve states' rights. That's all it was about, a family issue kind of thing. You know, it's our heritage kind of thing, being a Confederate. And yeah, it's definitely part of your heritage. It's part of mine too, okay? It's part of mine. I can tell you that Robert E. Lee was a very distant cousin of mine. Very distant cousin, yeah. Lees are in my family. Robert E. Lee, general from Virginia for the Confederacy, defected, is what I call it, from the U.S. to side with his state, which back then was a little bit different things. But anyway, I come at this from a lot of connections to the South. And I told my friend in Western Alabama, I said, look, have you ever read, I asked the question, I said, have you ever read the Constitution of the Confederacy? And he said, no. And I said, well, you should, because there's 4 places within it where the institution of slavery is protected. It was about slavery. And Tom didn't talk to me after that. Because I gave him the links to read. And we've been talking for a year or two on different topics, but that one right there, that kind of turned him off. He wasn't about to go there. So that'll happen, okay? That will happen. But what I am saying is make every effort to reach out a hand and then listen to someone else's point of view. You may learn something. You may find a way to talk with them respectfully. You may be able to do research that you never thought you could possibly do, that was more sustainable and more accepted when you do things like that. Now, all these people I've been talking to over on X, on Twitter, well, the moment that I put out the possibility that we need to have a conversation about these kind of things, and I welcome their viewpoint, well, immediately they just turn it off. They stop talking to you, or they start rattling off a bunch of stuff from their side. And I used to do that. I used to do that a lot, but I've come to realize that that's not the way to move minds. By rattling off a bunch of things that supports your perspective on things. That's not the way to move the ball forward. It doesn't work. All it does is makes people more entrenched within whatever it is they were thinking to start out with. Because we already have certain biases toward organizations that don't agree with us, like the American College of Pediatrics, who we know was created in 2002 to oppose primarily adoption for LGBTQ people, gays and lesbians. They just didn't like that idea at all. They didn't think they needed to be adopting anybody for any reason. But it's a socially conservative organization that has gone after LGBTQ rights, gender identity rights, gender rights, all that kind of stuff. It's always been that way. So I have a real hard thing with that one. But I will tell you, if they would be willing to sit down at a table across from me or any other researcher in this community, I would love to find a way to have a conversation so that we can build the research that might actually address questions that both teams could appreciate and know that they had a part of in designing it. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. You can read more on the website. Let me put the captions up here so that you know where all of that's located. And you can go right there. There. Oh, wait. There. Go to www.cassandra, CASSANDRA-LLC.com. Go there. You can read the blog, read the emails or whatever that's got all this stuff on it, building trust through disagreement, and a call for a new era of research. Those two things came out today, just recently, actually. You can read up on those. And have a great evening, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow sometime around noon for the midday with Cassandra, and then at 6 p.m., both times are Eastern time, for the path forward. Have a great evening. Talk to you later.